I want you to picture the arrivals terminal of an airport, the specific energy of that place. People checking their phones, holding signs, scanning faces coming through the doors, the anticipation of waiting for someone you love. I was there on a Thursday afternoon in November, waiting for my fiancé, the man who had proposed to me 3 weeks earlier on the rooftop restaurant where we had our first date. The man I had said yes to without hesitation. The man whose ring was on my finger at that exact moment as I stood in that arrivals terminal holding a coffee and smiling at my phone. He had texted 20 minutes earlier. Just landed. Can't wait to see you. I was happy. Completely, simply, genuinely happy. There was a woman standing 10 feet away from me. I noticed her because she was holding a sign, handwritten, his name on it. I thought for a moment she was a driver, a car service. Then I looked at her more carefully. She was not a driver. She was a woman in her mid-30s, well-dressed, composed, wearing a ring on her left hand. She saw me looking at the sign. She looked at me, then at my hand, then back at my face. Something shifted in her expression. She said, "Is that his ring?" I said, "He gave it to me 3 weeks ago." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "We have been married for 4 years." The coffee cup was still in my hand. I remember that detail specifically. I did not drop it. I held it. I said, "I think we need to talk." She said, "Yes, I think we do." We sat down on a bench in the arrivals terminal and she opened her phone and showed me photographs. Their wedding, their apartment, their life. By the time he walked through those doors 20 minutes later, we were both waiting for him. Stay with me? His name was Marco. We had met 14 months earlier at a conference. He was charming and attentive and completely present in the way that, I understand now, people who are hiding something learn to be. When you are managing a secret life, you become very skilled at being fully present in each version of it, because distraction is dangerous. Inconsistency gets you caught. He told me he had never been married. He told me he traveled frequently for work. Consulting, he said, for companies in Europe. He told me he kept his life simple because his work was complicated. I had believed all of it. He was in my city 2 weeks of every month. The other 2 weeks, Europe. That was the rhythm of us. And I had accepted it because the 2 weeks he was there were genuinely wonderful. He proposed with a ring he said he had designed himself. I had cried. My best friend had cried. My mother had cried. 3 weeks of wedding planning, 3 weeks of happiness so complete it felt almost unreal. I understand now why it felt unreal, because it was. Her name was Elena. She'd been married to Marco for 4 years. They lived in Lisbon. She knew he traveled to the United States for work. She had never had a reason to question it. Until 3 weeks earlier, when he came home from a trip with a different energy. A lightness she hadn't seen in years. The specific lightness, she told me, of someone who has just done something that made them very happy. She had checked his location on the app they used for travel safety. He had been in my city, as he always was. But she had also found in his jacket pocket a receipt, a jewelry store, a ring. She had spent 3 weeks trying to decide what to do with that information. She had decided to come to his next arrival, to see what she could see. What she saw was me, standing in the arrivals terminal, wearing his ring, smiling at my phone. We sat on that bench for 20 minutes, comparing notes, calmly, carefully, the way two people do when the shock is so complete that the only available response is precision. By the time Marco walked through those doors, we had established the following. He had 2 phones. He had 2 apartments, one here, one in Lisbon. He had told each of us the other city was work. He had been doing this, as far as Elena could trace, for the entirety of their marriage. He saw us both at the same moment. He stopped walking. He stood very still in the middle of the arrivals terminal with his carry-on bag and looked at the 2 women he had been lying to sitting on a bench together. Elena said very quietly, "Come sit down, Marco." His face in that moment, I have thought about it many times. It was not the face of someone calculating. It was the face of someone who has just run out of road. He sat down. For about 30 seconds, he said nothing. Then he said, "I can explain." Elena said, "Don't." Just that. One word. I gave her the ring. Right there, on the bench. I took it off my finger and placed it in her hand. She looked at it for a moment. Then she put it in her bag. I stood up. I picked up my coffee, still in my hand, still somehow not dropped. And I walked out of the arrivals terminal. I did not look back. I got to my car. I sat in the parking garage for a while. Then I drove home. Marco called 11 times that evening. I blocked the number. He sent emails. I created a filter. He showed up at my apartment once. I called the building's front desk and had him removed. The engagement had lasted 3 weeks. The ending took less than an hour. Elena filed for divorce 4 months later. I know this because she sent me a message, brief, direct, that said simply, "I wanted you to know. Thank you for not running." I wrote back, "Thank you for showing me the photos." That was the entirety of our relationship. 2 women who met in an arrivals terminal and accidentally dismantled a lie that had been running for 4 years. People ask me, how are you not angrier? The honest answer is that I used all the anger in the parking garage. By the time I drove home, it had converted into something cleaner, something closer to clarity. I had been with Marco for 14 months. I had been engaged to him for 3 weeks. I had given him, in total, 14 months of my life and my trust. Elena had given him 4 years. If I was going to be angry on behalf of anyone, it was going to be her. But Elena didn't seem to want anger either. She wanted what I wanted, to be free of it, to have the full picture, to stop living inside a story that had been carefully constructed to keep both of us from seeing clearly. The thing about elaborate deceptions is that they require constant maintenance. Every detail has to connect to every other detail. Every story has to be consistent. The person doing the maintaining is always, eventually, exhausted by it. Marco had been maintaining 2 full lives for 4 years. I think about that sometimes, not with sympathy, with something closer to a clinical observation about how much energy people will spend on the wrong thing. 4 years of maintenance, 20 minutes on an airport bench. It was always going to end this way. The only question was whether Elena and I would be looking at each other or looking away. We looked at each other. That made all the difference. New story every day. Subscribe so you never miss one. Just wait.